Hello, I am Cristina and we are going to talk about grammar. In linguistics, grammar is a set of structural rules governing the composition of clauses, phrases and words in any given natural language. The term refers also to the study of such rules, and this field includes morphology, syntax and phonology, often complemented by phonetics, semantics and pragmatics. Grammar is composed by different linguistic units. The basic units of analysis are phonemes, morphemes, sentences and other units such as words, phrases and clauses. In this lesson, we are going to pay attention to phrases. The phrase is a constituent which can be identified by looking at the word class to which at least one of its elements belongs, and depending on the type of words that make up the phrase, we may have different types. The noun phrase, the adjective phrase, the adverb phrase, the verb phrase, and the prepositional phrase. A noun phrase is a phrase which has a noun or indefinite pronoun as its head word, or which performs the same grammatical function as such a phrase. There is a characteristic function in the internal structure of the noun phrase which makes it different from the adjective phrase and the adverb phrase. This is the determinant function. The determiner is invariably the first element that appears in the noun phrase, and some of them are the, all, these, those, three, etc. But we can also find other elements in the noun phrase. All other constituents in the noun phrase which are subordinated to the head are called modifiers. If they appear before the noun, they are called pre-modifiers, and if they appear after the noun, they are called post-modifiers. In the structure of the noun phrase, pre-modifiers have a function. They can be adjective phrase, noun phrase, classifying genitive, or adverb phrase. On the one hand, the adjective phrase pre-modifier can consist of one-word adjective phrase, several adjectives with no limit of the number of adjectives that can appear before the head, an adjective phrase plus a modifier, and there are also other elements that can also act as adjectives and have the function of pre-modifiers in the noun phrase. These are the ed and the ing participles. Some examples are the Greek yogurt, the English blue old small t-shirt, a very deep ocean, or the interesting speech. On the other hand, the head of a noun phrase can be pre-modified by another noun phrase, which often consists of only a head. However, it can also occur that the noun phrase head can be pre-modified by a noun phrase, which is also pre-modified by another noun phrase, or we can find the noun phrase head pre-modified by coordinating nouns. For example, college student, sign language studies, or language and literature studies. The noun phrase head can also be pre-modified by a classifying genitive. This genitive cannot be confused with the specifying genitive. While the specifying genitive denotes possession, the classifying genitive relates the noun to a type or class. For example, a women's club is not the same as the woman's club, or a singer's voice is not the same as Frank Sinatra's voice. Finally, we also may find that the noun phrase head can be pre-modified by an adverb phrase, which consists of a head only. For example, the then president or the very end. Let's look now at post-modifiers. In the structure of the noun phrase, post-modifiers have a function. They can be adjective phrase, adverb phrase, prepositional phrase, noun phrase, finite clause, or a non-finite clause. Adjective phrases in English normally precede the noun, so it's only in some specific cases that we find an adjective as post-modifier of a noun head. For example, certain numbers of limited adjectives, the people involved, when a noun head phrase is a pronoun, everything blue, an adjective plus a prepositional phrase, the man proud of his son, an adjective plus infinitive clause, the tea sweet enough to drink, an adjective in comparative degree, a girl prettier than Angelina Jolie, or so plus an adjective plus a finite or non-finite clause. For example, a boy so smart that he solved the problem. We can also find adverb phrases after the noun. This type of post-modification is very common. For example, the day after or the players offside. On the other hand, prepositional phrases are also a very common type of post-modification, and we may find more than one prepositional phrase acting as post-modifier. For example, the boy at the school or the book on the table. Contrary to the previous two, the noun phrase post-modification is not very common. For example, girls your age or a hat this size. Another kind of post-modification are finite clauses. There are three different types that can act as post modifiers. A relative clause, for example, the girl who went to the park is my friend. A positive clause, David, my neighbor, studies medicine. A clause introduced by a temporal conjunction, the week after the concert. Finally, the last group of post modifiers are non-finite clauses. There are three different types. Infinitive clause, she is the girl to speak with. ING participle clause, the woman wearing the red dress is my boss. Or ED participle clause, the poem read by the actor was written by my brother. We have looked at pre-modifiers and post-modifiers, but we can also find discontinuous modifiers when part of the same modifier appears before the head noun and the rest of it continues after the head noun. For example, a different book from mine or a slower car than yours. Let me turn now to adjective phrases. An adjective phrase is a phrase whose head word is an adjective, and the adjective in an adjective phrase can initiate the phrase, conclude it, or appear in a medial position. The only function we can distinguish within the adjective phrase, apart from its head, is the function of modifier. The same as with the noun phrase, we speak of pre-modifier, post-modifier, and discontinuous modifier. On the one hand, the function of pre-modifier is realized by adverb phrases. For example, very beautiful, extremely dangerous, or slightly difficult. On the other hand, the function post-modifier can be realized by the adverb enough, for example, clear enough, a prepositional phrase, for example, good at math, a finite clause, I am happy that she passed all her exams, or a non-finite clause, for example, I am ready to go. And the last one, discontinuous modifiers, can be classified in 4 different cases. So plus adjective plus that clause or as to clause, for example, the exam was so difficult that nobody passed it. As plus adjective plus as plus reduced comparative clause or noun phrase, for example, he is as intelligent as his mother. More or less plus adjective plus than plus comparative clause or noun phrase, for example, Anna is more radical than her boyfriend. Or 2 plus adjective plus infinitive clause, for example, Daniel is too young to smoke. Now we'll move on to the adverb phrase. An adverb phrase is a phrase whose head word is an adverb. It is the linguistic term for a group of 2 or more words operating adverbially when viewed in terms of their syntactic function. In the internal structure of the adverb phrase, we can distinguish the same 2 functions as in the adjective phrase, that is, head and modifier. The same as with the noun phrase and the adjective phrase, we speak of pre-modifier and post-modifier. The function of pre-modifier of the adverb phrase head can only be realized by intensifying adverb phrases, and we may find an adverb pre-modified by more than one pre-modifier. For example, rather quickly or hardly less foolishly. Post-modifiers can be the adverb enough, which may be followed by an infinitive clause, for example, well enough, or well enough to go, or a finite clause introduced by done. These horses run faster than we thought. Furthermore, we can find adverb phrases in different kinds of discontinuous modifiers. So plus adverb plus that clause or as to clause, for example, John and Sarah were so late that they could not enter the concert. As plus comparative clause or noun phrase, my computer is as slow as yours. More or less plus adverb plus than plus reduced comparative clause or noun phrase, for example, David waits less patiently than his brother. Or 2 plus adverb plus infinitive clause, he spoke too fast to be understood. To finish up, we have the prepositional phrase. In simplest terms, prepositional phrases consist of a preposition and an object of a preposition. Prepositions are indeclinable words, which means that they only have one possible form that introduce the object of a prepositional phrase. The structure of the prepositional phrase is characterized by having a preposition whose function is that of prepositional and a prepositional complement, and the constituent realizing the function prepositional governs the constituent, which has the function of prepositional complement. The prepositional complement is normally realized by noun phrases, but there are other 4 possibilities. For example, double-H clause, I was laughing at what Sarah said, ING participle clause, David is afraid of walking under a ladder, prepositional phrase, the cat jumped from behind the wall, and adverb phrase, she lives here until quite recently.